Diamond in the Rough by C. Inanen. I guess I should introduce myself before I start telling the story. I'm Johnny Rivers, like the rock and roll singer. He's from New York. I'm from Chillicothe, Ohio. No chance we'll be mistaken for one another. He's movie star handsome. I'm just a regular guy. I was clubhouse manager for the Tulsa Barons baseball team from 2003 to 2006. This took place then. Some of it I was there for, some's been told to me, and some I'm pure D guessing on, but it's as true as I can tell it. Mockingbird Graham's name was on a list. His real name, of course, wasn't Mockingbird. It was Melon, named after his grandfather. His fellow students at Brooks County High School had called him Bird. Most everyone else knew him as Mockingbird. Georgia is a really small town, population about 500 or so. Growing up on the outskirts of Barwick, Mockingbird might have lacked for playmates his own age, but there were plenty of birds. Watching and listening to them, he learned to imitate their calls. Mockingbird. The list containing his name was in Spanky Cummins' desk at the old ballpark in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's the one north of Pine and east of Admiral, built in 1928. In 2003, it was home to the Tulsa Barons, and like the Barons, it needed a little help, maybe more than a little to be honest. Sun-bleached wooden stands and crumbling concrete were watched over by the silent manual scoreboard, which had once been painted green. Major League Baseball's first amateur draft was held in 1965. By 2003, the top 500-plus amateur ball players were assigned to teams annually by the draft system. Spanky Cummins' list consisted of names of promising players who for one reason or another weren't chosen in the draft. Some were talented amateur high school or college players who hadn't impressed Major League scouts. Others had flown under the radar. Mockingbird Graham was one of the latter. The Brooks County High School Trojans weren't scouted. Football was the sport there. No Major League Baseball scout had ever seen Mockingbird Graham pitch. His stats were discounted accordingly. Red Hancock, who'd played outfield for the Aim. You won't regret it. Spanky Cummins leaned back in his chair after the phone call. It had been good to hear from old Red Hancock, of course. The fact he'd thought enough to call him with a tip on a prospective player meant something too. He could sure use another good pitcher. He folded his hands across his big belly and tried to recall a sports writer down in Georgia he might call. School was out for the summer, or he'd call the coach at the high school. Then he reached for the phone again. Why not try? Spanky Cummins on this end. Coach? How are you? Spanky Cummins, the second baseman? Spanky laughed. Sometimes his name opened doors. Used to be second baseman. Now I'm manager of the Tulsa Barons. You could turn a double play as good as anyone, Mr. Cummins. What can I do for you? No, wait. Let me guess. Mockingbird Graham. You got it in one. What can you tell me about him? Well, first of all, I'm surprised he wasn't drafted. He and I both had hopes he would be. Let's see, he's a good kid. Hard worker, listens to instructions. He can throw a baseball. I had him on the varsity 3 years. He was my mainstay, but of course you have to let everyone play a little bit. He was the one I would turn to in a tight spot in the late innings, though. Great fastball. Good control. He'd never thrown a curve until he was a sophomore. That still needs some work. The coach paused for a moment, thinking. Throws right and bats right. I don't know quite how to put this, Mr. Cummins. He sees things other people don't see. I guess you could say he's observant. Yeah, that's the word, observant. Mockingbird Graham and his father closed the doors on the old blue Chevrolet pickup truck almost simultaneously. Clunk, clunk. Mockingbird had been behind the wheel as his father dozed in the passenger seat on the ride home. They were dusty, sweaty, and tired. Working concrete isn't any easy job. Working concrete on a hot summer day in South Georgia is harder yet. Working concrete on a hot summer day in South Georgia on a Monday when one member of your crew hasn't bothered to show up and you're on a schedule just about tops the list. Supper will be ready soon as you boys wash up, Mrs. Graham said as the screen door banged behind them when they entered the house. Each man gave her a kiss on the cheek, careful not to brush against her and dirty her cotton dress with concrete dust. Black lunch boxes were placed on the counter at the same time. Got a letter in the mail today from Isaac, she told them. And a fella called from Tulsa, Oklahoma for you, Mockingbird. The letter would be from Mockingbird's brother who was serving overseas in Iraq with the U.S. Army. Tulsa, Oklahoma? Mockingbird asked. Did he say what he wanted? A Mr. Cummins from the Tulsa Barons. They're a baseball team. He wants you to pitch for them. Amazing. After he'd just about given up hope, Mockingbird thought, cleaning up under the hose out back. His father was doing the same thing in the bathroom. The cold water sluiced over his well-developed pectorals, washing off the sweat and the concrete dust. That lime would get into your skin. It wasn't good for you and made you itch. Slipping on a clean pair of jeans and a t-shirt without drying off, he was ready for supper. It was cooler doing it that way, and the Graham house wasn't air-conditioned. The three of them sat at the table. Isaac's letter was passed around and read. It had been 114F in Iraq, as he wrote. He'd spent the day repairing tank tracks, brutal work, but a necessary part of tank maintenance. He says here the tank he worked on had Poteet written on the main cannon. Mrs. Graham read. What's Poteet? She looked at her son and husband. Mr. Graham shook his head. He didn't know. Town in Texas, Mockingbird said. All three of them thought about that. Sounds like a girl's name, she finally said. Maybe it is, Mr. Graham offered. Some boy missing something, his hometown or his girl, I'm guessing. They all nodded. That was probably a good guess. What about this man from Oklahoma? Who called? He finally said. A Mr. Cummins. He left a couple numbers, says call anytime. He wants Mockingbird to pitch for his baseball team. Mr. Graham looked at Mockingbird. You should call directly after we're done eating. Sounds important. Yes, sir, Mockingbird agreed. I intend to. After the supper dishes were cleared, Mockingbird called using the black rotary dial phone on the wall next to the kitchen counter. Hello, he said as the call was picked up. This is Melon Graham, Mockingbird. I'd like to speak to Mr. Cummins if he's available. This is Spanky Cummins. I left a message for you earlier. I'm the manager of the Tulsa Barons, and I hear good things about you, Mockingbird. Would you be interested in coming up to pitch for us? Yes, sir, I'm interested. I never heard of the Tulsa Barons, but I've heard of you. We're a new AA team, brand new this year, based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I understand you weren't drafted by anyone in the amateur draft this year. No, sir, I wasn't. Coach wrote a letter for me, but, well, I wasn't. I spoke with your coach today. He told me that you should have been. You talked with Coach? Him and another man, too, whose word I trust, Red Hancock. He played outfield for the American Giants. He says he's seen you pitch and that you might be a fit for my team. I'd like to offer you a tryout. Their conversation continued. Spanky explained the details. Mockingbird listened. When they ended the call, he was almost in a daze. Well, Mr. Graham looked at his son expectantly as the phone was hung up. They want me to go up to Tulsa and try out for the team, professional baseball. If they like the way I look, I'll get a 10-day contract. And if they still like the way I look after that, it's $6,900 for the first year. What did you tell him? I said I have to talk about it with you, and I'd have to give notice to Mr. Bishop since I'm working for him. He fell silent. You go? I know you can make more money pouring concrete right now, but this is your chance. Mrs. Graham nodded silent agreement with her husband. You might never get another. Concrete always needs to be poured. It'll be there if you don't make it. It was almost as if Mockingbird Graham's mind was divided into three parts, each thinking its own thoughts. As he looked out the window of the Greyhound bus at the rolling panorama of scenery, the forefront of his mind was occupied with the trip itself. He'd caught the bus in Thomasville, Georgia, on the US 84 bypass, where he and his father had waited in the cab of the old blue Chevy pickup truck until it was nearly time to go. He transferred to another bus in Atlanta. Both were full of passengers like him. His Brooks County High School athletic bag at his feet, full of clothing, and his baseball glove, was the only luggage he had. Some of the people on the bus carried their belongings in sacks from grocery stores. Others had additional luggage, suitcases, which had to be transferred from one bus to the other. Stores, buildings, houses, farms, and fields he'd never seen before unspooled like a film strip on his right. By the time they reached Atlanta, it was dark. Oxford, Birmingham, and Tupelo were lighted oases, while the roads and towns in between were marked with a blur of neon and other lights. His seat was comfortable enough, but cramped his 6 feet, 3 inches frame. The thin old man seated next to him breathed with an audible sound on each exhalation. In the back of his mind were thoughts of his home and his past. Thoughts of Melody, the girl he'd been seeing. Thoughts of his parents and of his brother. They were all jumbled up as if he knew he was closing a door behind himself that he'd never be able to reopen. It felt as if he'd made a momentous decision and he wasn't sure it was the right thing to do. Alternately, in the back of Mockingbird's mind was excitement looking forward to the future. Professional baseball. He was going to get his chance after all. He'd dreamed about it for years. 40 hours after he'd boarded the bus in Thomasville, Mockingbird stepped off the stairs of another bus in Tulsa, Oklahoma, blinking in the direct sunlight. Carrying his athletic bag, he took out his sunglasses and unfolded the map of Tulsa he carried. He spent a couple minutes orienting himself. The stadium was only a few miles away. He'd already plotted his route. 3 blocks north until Detroit Avenue intersected with the railroad tracks, then east and north until he crossed I-244. If he reached the Cherokee Expressway, he'd gone too far. He'd walk, of course. Who knows what a taxicab cost? It'd feel good to stretch his legs again, anyway. Looking at the backs of buildings and vacant lots as he stepped along the shiny steel railroad tracks, Mockingbird got his first taste of Tulsa. It was sure different from Barwick, noisier, for one thing. Spanky Cummins, me and our catcher Everett, Butch Cassidy all watched Mockingbird Graham as he stood on the pitcher's mound. "Watch Butch for your signs," Spanky told him. "Yes, sir," Mockingbird replied. It would be a single index finger pointing down for a fastball over the plate, a pinky finger down, or the index finger pointing toward the edge of home plate for inside or outside. 2 fingers down called for a curveball. All 4 fingers pointing down and wiggling meant a changeup. Those were the only pitches he threw, he'd told us. "I can throw a slider," he'd said, "but not very well." Mockingbird squeezed the rosin bag, then dropped it. He scratched around in the dirt with his spikes and planted 1 foot on the pitcher's rubber. Our infield was notorious for being mostly hard-packed clay, which made for lively batted balls that were hit there, a pitcher's nightmare. Infielders didn't appreciate it, either. It was almost like playing on asphalt. Butch held his index finger downward between his legs. Mockingbird moved fluidly, not much of a wind-up, just an easy overhand throwing motion. His follow-through was a little more pronounced. He was getting power and inertia into his pitch. The ball sped toward home plate, straight and true. When Butch caught it, there was a loud, audible pop. He called for 3 straight fastballs. Each was like the first, fast, straight, and in the strike zone. I could tell the young man on the mound was already comfortable throwing. He was relaxed. You could practically see his confidence blooming. Spanky was sending in signs to Butch, telling him wordlessly what he wanted Mockingbird to throw next. Spanky's old school. Sign stealing has been a part of baseball since 1876, but Spanky sent in 3 signs before each pitch. It was arranged with the catcher before each inning which would be right. Even I didn't know. He began varying the desired position, inside, outside, or whatever. Then he started asking for changeups. A changeup is thrown like a fastball, only it's not thrown as hard or fast. I guess it would be fair to say that most young amateur pitchers don't like changeups. That pitch seems as if it's contrary to common sense, and there's some truth to that, too. In Little League and high school baseball, most batters locate the ball after it leaves the pitcher's hand with their eyes and watch it come toward them. Because of that, changeups don't fool batters at that level. As you move upward, batters start to watch pitchers release points, watching the hand and not the ball. The human eye can't really tell how fast a pitch is coming toward you until it's about 30 feet away. A pitch that looks as if it will be coming fast toward you, but doesn't, becomes a more valuable weapon in a pitcher's arsenal. By the time you're in the major leagues, a good changeup can be devastating. Mockingbird had a good changeup. His motion, his wind-up, everything was like it was for his fastball, but instead of speeding toward the plate, the ball floated slowly. It helped there was a big variation in speed between his fastball and his changeup, too. I didn't have a speed gun on him, but there was probably a 15 miles per hour difference between those changeups and his fastballs. Spanky did. He was charting the speed of each pitch, taking notes. He's not entirely old school. I was impressed. Mockingbird pitched like a machine. He'd thrown 30 pitches one after another and didn't show any evidence of fatigue. Spanky called for a curveball. Butch signaled with 2 fingers pointing down toward the dirt, an inverted peace sign. Mockingbird watched intently, nodded, and then went into his wind-up. The pitch curved downward, just out of the strike zone. Spanky moved around watching Mockingbird from various positions. He'd started out on the dugout steps, moved to third base, then first base, and was now crouching over Butch's shoulder like an umpire. He started giving Mockingbird breaks. Every 20 pitches he'd call for a break before they resumed. He was mixing up the variety of pitches, too, still calling for more fastballs than anything else. I couldn't detect any pattern for the others. During one of the breaks, he told Mockingbird, "All right, Take a position in the batter's box. You just hit a deep fly ball into left field. Run the bases when I say go." "Yes, sir," Mockingbird replied. He did just that. We all watched him rounding the bases at his top speed. His long legs carried him along at a pretty good clip. Back to the pitcher's mound, he was told after he'd touched home plate. He resumed throwing. 20 pitches later, Spanky called out, "That's enough," and motioned for Mockingbird to come back to the dugout. I could see the circles of sweat underneath his armpits. Aside from that, he didn't show any signs of having thrown 100 pitches. "Have you got a place to stay, Mockingbird?" he asked. "You've got a 10-day contract." "No, sir. I thought I'd find a motel room." He hesitated, slipping off his glove, and then added, "Thank you, sir. Johnny here can help you with that, get you situated, and so on. You're pitching Friday." I did that, got him a uniform that fit, told him we had a game tomorrow, helped him find a motel, 6 he could stay in, and drove him there when I learned he intended to walk. Nice, polite kid. He paid attention to everything I said. That evening, Mockingbird called home to report he'd arrived safely and been offered a 10-day contract. The conversation was brief. He didn't even have to add any additional coins to keep the call going. It took a while for him to get to sleep, thinking about the day's experience. At 11:30, he got back out of bed, put on his jeans, and went outside his motel room and just sat by the door for a while, listening. He didn't hear any night birds, but he did hear a South Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad freight train. The diesel-electric locomotive whistled to clear a railroad crossing. Mockingbird whistled back. Pretty close, but not exact. He tried it experimentally a few more times until he got it right. We lost the next day's game 13-3. Mockingbird, suited up and ready to play, sat on the bench for 8 innings, watching everything. In the 9th inning, Spanky sent him in as a pinch runner. There was no strategic reason to do that. What it did was give Lopez, our center fielder, a chance to hit the showers while there was still plenty of hot water, and it gave Mockingbird a chance to get into the game. That might help ease any jitters he had about playing for the Barons. Even after having sat on the bench watching 8 innings of losing baseball, with the sparse crowd already filing out toward the exits, I could see he was excited to be on the field. Mockingbird's first start came on Friday, a night game, against the Topeka Roughnecks. He pitched 6 innings, struck out 5 batters, walked 1, and gave up 3 runs. He held them scoreless until the 5th inning when the Roughnecks started hitting him. Spanky pulled him in the 7th inning, sending in Kevin Strange to pitch instead. We lost 6-1. Mockingbird was the losing pitcher of record. After the game, I asked Spanky, "What did you think of Mockingbird?" "He did all right. He's raw, and he's got one serious flaw. He telegraphs his curveball. He might as well stand out there on the mound and shout to the batter, 'Hey, I'm going to throw you a curveball,' but aside from that, he did all right." We lost the Saturday game 11-2. Charlie Cassidy pitched until the 8th inning, turning in an uninspired performance. Spider Claremont, our hard-hitting first baseman, hit a home run that might still be traveling if it hadn't bounced off the scoreboard. Old Larry, who runs the scoreboard, shook his fist at him as he rounded the bases at a trot. Spider waved back to him. Kevin Strange pitched the last 2 innings, and that was that. Spanky Cummins had me send 2 season passes to Red Hancock. I threw a refrigerator magnet into the letter with our 2003 schedule on it. You can't say I don't have initiative. Then we went on the road, destination Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we'd play the Baton Rouge Cavaliers. Their outfield lighting isn't up to par, but the rest of the stadium is pretty nice. Once again, Mockingbird started the game. For a change, we started off pretty well. Mockingbird was throwing strikes, fastballs, and changeups. He seemed to have the Cavaliers in his back pocket. Bobby Douglas, our second baseman, singled in the 3rd inning. He looked as if he might be stranded out there. Spanky sent in the sign for him to steal, and off he went on the first pitch to Spider Claremont, which was low and away. The catcher blocked it, but didn't even attempt to throw to second. He was still picking the ball out of the dirt when Bobby Douglas started his slide. He barely had time to catch his breath when Spider Claremont banged one off of the wall in left field. By the time the outfielder relayed the ball and we'd scored 1 run, and Spider Claremont was standing on second base, pulling off his batting gloves and dusting off his uniform. When Mockingbird walked out to the mound in the 5th inning, it was still 1-0, our favor. He didn't mess around. No theatrics, no unnecessary moving around. He just started throwing strikes. The first batter he faced went down swinging on a 1-2 pitch. The second one worked the count to 3-2 with 2 foul balls. He went down looking at a low outside pitch that just nicked the corner of the plate by a whisker. Despite his half-hearted protests to the umpire, he ended up walking back to the bench. The third batter connected with a changeup and drilled the ball into center field. Lopez was under it when it came down. 1-2-3 side retired. Not bad. We loaded the bases in the sixth, but failed to score any runs. The lights came on, and maybe that had some effect on what happened next. The first batter he faced, a left-handed hitter, lined a single to right field. He walked the second man. The third batter connected with a high fastball and sent it into no man's land between center and right field. Neither outfielder caught it. Lopez picked it up on the roll and fired into home, but the damage was done. 2 runs had scored. Sometime during the 7th inning, I realized that Mockingbird was only throwing fastballs and changeups. I thought back and couldn't recall a single curve he'd thrown all evening. It worked. He retired the side. Kevin Strange, go ahead and get warmed up, Spanky told him. You'll start the 8th inning. We were under orders to groom him for a closer spot in the big club's rotation. By rights, he should probably have been pitching up in AAA ball. The final score was Cavaliers 2, Barons 1. Mockingbird was charged with another loss. He sat dejectedly in the locker room after the game. I mentioned to him, "Tough loss, Mockingbird." "Yes, sir," he said. "I let that pitch in the 6th inning get away from me. The whole team loses because I made one mistake." I wasn't quite sure what to say to him. That's baseball. You beat them for 5 innings, though. You can be proud of that. He shook his head, looking up at me. "Let me tell you a story," I said. I sat down next to him. "You've heard of Warren Spahn, right?" "Sure," he answered. "Best left-handed pitcher I ever saw, maybe the best of all time. He made the All-Star team 17 times. 17 times. Mockingbird nodded his head. He was listening. It was 1951, Braves versus Giants. A young kid steps up to home plate. It was Willie Mays. You understand, this was before Willie Mays was Willie Mays. He was just some kid. Spahn throws to him and gives up a home run. The reporters in the locker room, after the game, asked Warren Spahn what happened. We both looked around the locker room. There weren't any reporters, just tired and beaten Barons. Warren Spahn says to them, "Gentlemen, for the first 60 feet, that was quite a pitch. You know the distance from the pitcher's mound to home plate is 60 feet 6 inches, right?" Mockingbird smiled. Maybe he'd heard the story before, maybe not. The Baton Rouge papers described it as a pitching duel. The next day we were scheduled to play the Cavaliers again. Joey Torino was our starting pitcher. Things went wrong right from the beginning. He gave up 2 runs in the first inning, 3 in the second. In the third inning he hit a batter and then walked one. The next man up connected with the second pitch and parked the ball in the left field bleachers. The score was 8-0, and we hadn't even gotten out of the third inning. Spanky walked out to the mound, and he took the ball away from Joey, motioning for Bob Wood to come into the game. Bob Wood admits to being 40 years old, and he serves as sort of a player coach, helping young pitchers, catching batting practice and so on. He's still got some stuff and is pretty sharp. He can step in and throw an inning or 2, but that's about it. He told me when I first met him, if I knew at 20 what I know now, I'd have been a 20-game winner 10 years in a row. As it was, he'd pitched all over, in the major leagues and a lot of AAA ball. I don't know what his lifetime record was, but he'd lost more than he'd won. He'd also told me, I was the famous player to be named later. You know, when they make a trade. This guy for that guy, and a player to be named later? Well, that was me. Pack your bags, Bob. You're headed to New York, or Milwaukee, Chicago, or St. Louis. Birmingham, Indianapolis. Tulsa. I like Bob Wood. He took his warm-up pitches and retired the side. Spanky came over to Mockingbird and he asked him, "How's your arm?" Mockingbird clasped his right bicep with his left hand, the way guys do when you ask that. "Fine, sir. Can you pitch today?" Spanky asked. "Sure," he was told. "Go ahead and get warmed up then. I'll put you in for the 5th inning." And he walked back to the dugout steps. Bob Wood got us out of the 3rd inning. He pitched the 4th inning too, but I could tell he was starting to run out of steam. Mockingbird took the mound for us in the 5th inning. He pitched 3 innings of 2-hit, 1-run baseball, all fastballs and changeups, before Spanky lifted him for Kevin Strange to start the 8th inning. We lost 10-1. Spanky and I were rooming together. The Tulsa Barons didn't offer first-class accommodations on the road. I overheard him on the telephone, talking to the big team the following morning. 2 things, he said, to whoever he was talking to on the other end. probably the general manager. 1. I've got a young fella down here on a 10-day contract, known as Mockingbird Graham. I listened. Yes, Mockingbird, he said. I don't know what his real name is. Melon or something. He's a right-handed pitcher. Throws fastballs and changeups. Came from some high school down in Georgia. He wasn't drafted. Yes, I can hold on. That's the guy, he resumed talking. I pictured someone up in Chicago on the other end of the phone pulling up Mockingbird's high school record. I've got my sources. You guys missed him. Spanky put his feet up on the bed and continued, I want to offer him a contract. Parade it for this year. It's nearly July. Now, Spanky gets more leeway than a lot of minor league managers do. He's smart and has proven that, time and again. He was a no-name player himself, and he coached in the major leagues after having managed successfully in the Negro Leagues. He also scouted for our major league affiliate. There are a number of players playing today who Spanky scouted and suggested offering opportunities to. There are a lot more who Spanky scouted and said, take a pass on this guy. For whatever reason. His good judgment is backed up by a good track record. That's good, he said into the phone. Second thing, I want to get a pitching coach down here. Whoever was on the other end of the phone was apparently talking. No, just for a few days, I realize we can't afford one. Believe me, I know that. I've got Kevin Strange down here that you want to bring along, for one thing, and this kid Mockingbird needs some pointers I can't give him. He listened. Think of it this way, he's like raw clay. This is your chance to mold him how you want. He needs help with his curveball. I stirred around in bed. Spanky looked at me. Starter or long relief, he said. I've used him in 3 games. He can throw a fastball. This is an opportunity for you. Spoil it by not sending down a pitching coach and he'll win some games. Sure. And I've got old Bob Wood to guide him as best he can. Spanky watched me get out of bed. I stepped closer to him and mouthed. He takes instruction well, nearly silently. He takes instruction well. He spoke into the phone. It's an investment. He listened then nodded. That'll work. I appreciate it. And he hung up the phone. Well, I asked, the question dangling in the air. Standard prorated contract for Mockingbird, he said. And they'll send down a pitching coach for him and Kevin Strange. They don't know exactly when, but it will be in July. That will be a chance for them to evaluate Strange progress, too. See if he's ready to move up to AAA. He took his feet off the bed and planted them solidly on the floor. A lot of money invested in that Strange kid. They don't know it yet, but Mockingbird's better. Sometimes, you find a diamond in the rough, you know. The end. Diamond in the Rough by C. Inanen.